Hey, thanks for checking out Nuts and Bolts with Tone, and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about a very common problem. This is a common problem among most platforms. It's very common on Chevys. So you'll get a vehicle and a check engine light will be on, and you'll scan it and it'll have knock sensor codes. It'll have one knock sensor code or both. So you could have a P0327, a P0332. That's the two that I had on the vehicle I'm going to talk to you about now. And those basically say the knock sensor signal is shorted or low. That just means the computer, the feedback voltage is not what it should be seeing, and it detects a problem. Either they failed electrically or they're not connected electrically. One or the other, but that's basically what it is. It's not a performance. Now, you can get a performance code. That's different. That means that the knock sensors aren't working when they should be. But this is basically a circuit problem. So the knock sensors, show you what they look like. So it looks like this. There's the knock sensor. Threads into the block. There's no hole. There's no nothing. All it does is send an electrical signal back when it detects knock. I had a Hyundai one time, and it came in with a knock sensor code. Crazy thing is that the engine had no oil in it, and it needed an engine. And the weird thing is that the only code that set was a knock sensor code, because the engine was knocking. Thought that was kind of funny. It was the only time I've ever seen that happen. Usually the knock sensors, they're just codes that you have to chase. Generally, they don't help us a lot. But anyways, so this is the knock sensor. It threads into the block, and then the connector pops on top. Well, so the knock sensors on GMs, on a 6-liter and a 5.3, they're in the engine valley, and there's two of them. And there's a recessed hole that goes down through into the block, and it goes through the engine valley cover plate. So in the engine valley cover plate, there's two holes about that big, and the knock sensors go down through it. All right, so let's say you're going to pull this engine valley cover plate off. You'd have to take the knock sensors out and unscrew the cover. If you're not doing the cover, all you have to do is unscrew the knock sensors. And the knock sensors have a socket on top. I'm not sure what size that is. So anyway, so what's really common back here is because it lives under the intake manifold, rats love this area of the vehicle. If you work on cars, you've seen this before. If you haven't seen it before, you will see it. It's very common. The rats like to get back to, they like to chew up the wiring and make nests out of all of the cushion that's under the undercover and stuff like that, like the insulator, the engine cover. They like to chew all that up and bring it down below and make themselves little beds. And so anyways, this is really common. So in this one, I've never actually seen one this bad. So on this one, it's a Chevy. This was an Escalade GM. And so the connector, like this, it sits facing the front and it clips on the top of the intake manifold. And the wire, it goes all the way around underneath. So it sits like this. So this one was so bad that when I unclipped this, I just gave this a little tug and then the whole wiring came out. So you can see, there you go, all chewed up. So this one was completely disconnected. I've never seen one that bad. So it looks like this on your knock sensor harness. Here's the rubber cap that's on the harness, because below this is a connector and above this is the harness, and there's two of those. All right, so these are above where each knock sensor goes. So your knock sensor's here, your connector clips on, and then that rubber boot pulls down and it seals that opening to keep everything out. So the rats chewed this up, and so then you get in there and you have to replace I always replace the knock sensors. They're coming out anyways. You replace the knock sensors because you're under there. It'd be really stupid not to replace them, because as soon as you don't, one of them's going to fail. You're pulling the intake manifold. You got to pull the intake manifold to do this job, and so replace them. I mean, if it's your own car, okay, fine, do just the harness, and then hope it's not the knock sensors later. But if it's a customer's car, if you're recommending this job, replace the knock sensors and the harness. A tech tip for you is anytime that you get a knock sensor code, Toyotas, they have a tendency to fail knock sensors, but not because of rats. They just fail. And so your problem could be the knock sensor or the knock sensor sub harness. Most knock sensors have a sub harness that comes out from under the intake manifold, and you disconnect that from the engine harness. So then that harness goes down and it plugs into each knock sensor. So anytime that you mess with knock sensors, you want to replace the sub harness and the knock sensors. Your problem could be either one, but you don't want to guess. I mean, why would you pull the intake manifold off and replace the knock sensors just to turn around and replace the harness? Or vice versa. If it's your own car, fine. You don't mind pulling the intake manifold, doesn't matter. But if it's a customer's car, you definitely want to make sure that you're recommending this up front. So the sub harness is very important. I mean, it's so common in this one that Dorman makes the sub harness. The one I put in was a Dorman one, because this was like a 05, I think. And, you know, parts are starting to become, you know, you're starting to see obsolete parts from good quality places. You're starting to see more of Dorman and things like that. But anyways, so in this video, I'm going to show you how to get in there and how to remove the intake manifold. It's not very difficult on this one. How to remove that intake manifold, a couple tips and tricks about disconnecting the injectors, and also how to replace these. And let's get into it. Okay, so here we go. We got these two covers off. So this cover here, there's an 8mm bolt here and an 8mm bolt here. And the same thing on this side, 8mm bolt right past the dipstick, and also right here that hold those covers on. So basically what you're going to do, the throttle body has coolant running through it, and you don't want to touch the throttle body hoses because then they'll leak. So all you're going to do is disconnect the throttle body. You're going to have 3 nuts here. You're going to take those off and disconnect the connector and lay the throttle body forward. You're going to disconnect this purge hose here. You're going to push this in and it's going to pop up. You're going to disconnect the electrical connector. You're going to disconnect all these injector connectors. You're going to pull up on the blue, and then you can depress the tab and pull them out. Another way to do it is to get a hook from underneath, and you can hook the injector. Let me see if I can get it. Sometimes you can get it from under here and you can get a hook. I need 2 hands, but anyways, you can get from underneath and you can depress that tab and get it out. So you're going to disconnect all 4 of the injector connectors on each side. You're going to unbolt this plate and get this plate out of here because it gets in the way of the intake coming off. There's an electrical connector right here. You're going to disconnect that for the knock sensor. Got a PCV hose right here you need to disconnect. Same thing on this side, the injector connectors here. The purge hose, you're just going to move out of the way. This guy here, you're going to move it out of the way. It kind of goes through the intake. You're going to disconnect the fuel hose here, the fuel line. And then the other thing that you're going to do is right here is going to be a knock sensor connector. You're going to disconnect that. In my case, that's what's going on right here. And here's the wires, because this thing has rats. So you can see all through here, all this debris from the rats. I'm gonna have to get a vacuum and vacuum all this out. So that's what we're going to be doing. And then from there, you're just going to disconnect all these intake bolts, and then you're going to lift the intake out of here, and then I'll show you what we're going to do from there. All right, let's get this off. Okay, so here's the intake. It's off. So basically, here's your purge valve hose here. All right. So you can see with this angle, it's really difficult to get it out of this channel in the intake, and it's very difficult to reach down there and disconnect it. So you disconnect it here to give you room, and then you pull the intake forward about 6 inches, and then you can reach back here and you can get it out. And you just depress this white tab in there and it will pull out. And then you can lift it out with, here's the PCV hose that goes to the back of the valve cover. Here's the fresh air PCV that goes to the front valve cover. You have your 4 injector connectors. So the harness, that plastic piece lays here, and there's a harness that comes along this channel, and then the other part of it comes along here. You just lift it up and back. And then here's your fuel line disconnect. Oh, and then the only other little trick to this is, in order to get the throttle body to be able to pull forward, you got to take the studs out. So they're E-Torques. So you just pop those 3 out, and then you can lay the throttle body forward like this. So here's the throttle body laying forward. So basically this is what's going on with this one. You can see that the knock sensor wire is chewed off completely there and there. So I got to clean all this up, pop out these covers, and replace the knock sensors and the harness, clean it all up, new gaskets, and we're going to roll it. This is very common on this engine to have this kind of damage from rats back there. All right, so here we go, the old knock sensor. It's 22 millimeter. All right. Got the old ones out. I put the new ones in. So here's the knock sensor harness. You have the front one and the rear one, and then this comes up and it goes up and goes onto the intake manifold. This clips on the intake. This is the knock sensors. So all you're gonna do is you're gonna pull your harness through each one. You can see how that is. You're just gonna pull it through, and you're just gonna click this on. To take it off, all you're gonna do is pop this tab right here. There's a tab on this side and on this side. You're just gonna reach under there with a hook and pop that off. And to put it on, all you do is push it down, it'll click, and then you just slide this rubber boot down and stick it on the hole. And that's how you install it, and then you put your intake manifold back on. All right, let's go. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that video. If you've never taken one of these apart, if you're just learning, if whatever, it doesn't matter. If you just watched it because you love this beautiful face, thank you for watching. One tech tip for you, and I just learned this, and I need to start remembering ahead of time, but there is a company that makes a tape that makes electrical wiring. You wrap it around the harness, and it's supposed to deter the vermin. It's supposed to deter the rats from chewing on it. I don't know if it's got some sort of poison or something in the tape, but it makes the rats not want to chew it. That's what one of my coworkers told me. I've never seen it before, but apparently it's out there. And I kicked myself in the butt because I forgot about it. I should have recommended it on this one, but I didn't think about it. So next time I will. So anyway, so if you have this problem, because, oh, here's the other thing about rats, is a lot of times when they chew stuff up, they come back and they have a tendency to chew the same thing. We had a van one time, and it had a engine wiring harness going across the front of the vehicle above the passenger headlamp, and it was about this big. And something about that one spot made the rats really happy because they chewed through the entire harness. And then a guy sat there repairing wires for like hours, and then it came back and they chewed through the same spot. I know some guys, I've seen diesels where they take like the rat blocks and they put a zip tie around them and they wrap them to the batteries. They tie them to the batteries. They tie them to different places under the hood to try to help deter. But if you ever get this as a tech, make sure that you put in your notes to please have the customer look into some sort of vermin, poison or deterrent. Just so you're telling them that they need to look into it. You're not going to do it. That's not your job. I mean, unless they want to pay you to do it. But that way they know. So when they come back again with knock sensor codes, because they chewed through the wiring again, that they didn't do anything about it, so you're not on the hook. You told them that they need to look into this, and they didn't. So anyways, thanks for watching the video. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the bell. You get notified of all my future content, which you're definitely going to want to see. Also, check me out on Instagram at Nuts and Bolts with Tone for the daily life as a mechanic, tools, all kinds of good stuff. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.